Hello, my friends. I want to share with you something very important, very special that is taking place right now in the world. Um, First off, this image, it's very hard to see on my phone here as it's a screenshot of another person's channel, which is already, low quality as it is. So it's not the quality that you should be looking at here, but just think about what I'll say to you of it. This object that now people throughout the world have begun to see. I've seen it for several years, going back, I believe, at least 4 or 5 years ago. I made a video of this. I took a video of it whenever it was above my house 6 or 7 months ago, something like that. And I explained in the video what I believed it to be. It changes its shape, it changes its colors, it rotates like a wheel. Zoomed in pictures that I got of this thing, it looks like it has a face of an eagle 1 second, and then in another second it looks like it's I don't know, got the face or shape of a man, a body, some kind of being. This thing changes its shape and colors, and it rotates. And if you go back to the prophet Ezekiel, you can see by what he said of famously Ezekiel's wheel what I believe that I'm actually looking at. And we're not the first ones to see it, because over 2,000 years ago there was another group of people who saw this. And there were a few who lived in Jerusalem who knew about the significance of it, but only a few, as the Magi who came from the east, most likely Persia. What they understood of it by the wise men who were sent was that a king was to be born, and not just a king, but the king of the Jews. And you got to understand that these Magi, they would have been wealthy. They would have been high up in society and culture, and they would have been highly educated for their day. They would have been something like we liken to a diplomat. So that the king of Persia is sending his good greetings to the king that will become king of the Jews. Meaning that, like any good kingdom, you need to have friends, or not so much even friends, but acquaintances with other nations and other kings, because someday you will need them for something. You will need their help or their power for something. And if you look at Persia, they certainly did not believe in, the Jewish God per se. They were not biblical Jews, although there were some Jews that would have lived there who just went to the nation to live. That was not their religion. They were pagans. They would have lived under an entirely different set of laws and rules and everything else. Very similar to how culture plays out all over the world, even unto this very day. But they saw this sign of a star, and they knew what it meant. So thus, of course, they traveled to where the star had led them to, and they were there for the birth of Jesus. If you get into the scriptures a little bit, let's look at this. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. And they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. When the angel had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "and take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you." So here's something very interesting about this. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." And then listen to this part. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. Why would Herod, and why would all of Jerusalem, meaning the Jews, the Pharisees, the scribes, Sadducees, the Essenes, why would they be perturbed at this? Aren't they awaiting their king? Wouldn't they know about the scriptures, that somebody who is a foreigner has been sent there because of those scriptures and because they were able to interpret the sky? Wouldn't they have known about their king? No, they were disturbed by it. And this goes to paint the big picture of what's happening in the world right now today. I see this star that me and my dear friend call the disco ball. We've called it that for years since we began seeing it. I've seen this star for years, and I've seen it get closer, and I've seen it farther away. I've seen it over this house and that house. Last time I saw this, I believe, was 2 or 3 days ago, and I just kind of glance up at it now, as before I was almost enamored by it because I've never seen anything like it in my life. And if you see something like that in the skies, as you know from listening to some of my former videos, if you saw that whenever I recorded it and spoke about it, it's something really exciting. It's amazing. What could that possibly be, you think to yourself? And then it dawns on me. I believe that is Ezekiel's will. That is the Star of Bethlehem. That is why we were to look up in the last days. I believe that is all a sign of the birth of a king. Now they in Persia, diplomats, knowledgeable on the scriptures, they recognized what that sign was, but a prophet has no honor in his own home. Those who lived in Jerusalem, the Jews, King Herod, they wanted nothing to do with it, just as you see happening in the world today. How many of these Watchman channels, and I know because I've listened to all of them, I mean, I've been down the list trying to find any of them, one of them, who has any eyes to see it all, and they don't, because they're all eating of the same fruit. The same fruit that Herod and the rest of Jerusalem ate from 2,000 years ago. They will tell you all about physical Israel. They'll tell you all about the geopolitics, tell you all about the governments, they'll tell you all about the war. They'll tell you about everything happening in this world. But you know what I've never heard a single one of them speak about? This star that's right up above our heads. This star who is revealing himself to the world. But you know where I do hear it from? From these channels who are not Christians per se. They are Christians in that they believe in God. They believe in Jesus. Some of these channels that have shown this, you'll see them even praying and doing other things. But they don't know Jesus. They're walking down a path where they're in divination and they're worshiping all kind of different things. They're not in Jesus, or they wouldn't do such things. But they're also not an enemy of Jesus. And if you look at the Magi, which more than likely would have been Persians, if you look at their situation, was it any different 2,000 years ago? Remember when Jesus confronts the apostles? Anyone who is for you is not against you. Because they who were invited to the wedding banquet didn't show up. There's a king about to be born into this world, and somebody in the world is going to have to see this. Somebody's going to have to send the message out there. They who were supposed to be invited and dressed and ready to come in, they weren't ready. They didn't show up. They weren't dressed. So here you go. Send this message out there. Anybody who will listen, here it is. Look up and you can see it. It's coming. So that's why I see this on multiple people's channels now, talking about this particular star that I've called the disco ball for years. I can see it. They can see it. How about all these watchmen? Think any of them have seen it? No, not a single one of them, because they would be perturbed by it. They would be disturbed that all of what they've believed, the whole lie that they've believed of dispensationalism and Zionism and multiple gods and the physical land of Israel and the blood of Abraham, all of that they believed would be a lie if they admitted to what this sign actually was. It throws their whole world into the garbage can because it was all useless. And that's the days that I believe we're living in. New Jerusalem is right up there for us to see it. Go out at night if it's dark and cloudy or not cloudy. I've actually seen it when it was cloudy out also, but especially when it's not cloudy. Go out sometime at night and just spend some time looking up what we were told to do. I bet within a week or two you'll see it. I bet you'll see this, and I bet you'll be just as I was the first time I saw it. What is that? That's amazing. This can't be man-made. This can't be a drone. This can't be a plane. What is that up there? You'll see it if you just go out and look up, which is what we were commanded to do, actually. How will we know the Lord's return? Look up, because you'll see it. You'll see something that you know. But what is all these watchmen and prophets doing? They're looking back at the physical things, at the geopolitical wars, and they're looking back at those who call themselves Jews, and they're looking back at denominations and Christian houses, and they're looking back at everything else, too absorbed in that they miss what's right above their own eyes. You won't hear any of them talk about this, but I'll talk about it because I believe Jesus. And I believe that whenever I look up and I see this thing, it's no different than the wise men 2,000 years ago who saw it. Because what do the wise men say here? Let's look at this. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. It's saying that the star went on ahead of them. It's saying that they didn't have it in their vision the whole time. They generally knew where to go, either by the scripture's directions or by the star, obviously, that was leading them at that time. They knew generally where the star went so that they could follow it, but it didn't stay in their vision the whole time. The only time that it stayed in their vision is whenever it was over top of the house where the baby Jesus had just been born. Then it stayed there. As you see this, they were overjoyed to see it stop there, meaning they didn't follow it the entire time. They generally followed it. They knew the direction they were to go, but it wasn't there the whole time. And whenever I'm speaking about this, I've seen the star over the course now of several years, and I've seen it get closer even. I know generally where to look whenever I'm looking up. I know exactly what I'm looking at. Some nights I'll see it, some nights I won't. But I tell you, the time is coming where this star, this heavenly body, this new Jerusalem, will be out in front of the whole world at once, so that all will see it. All will see its glory. It will hover over the earth, so from the east even unto the west, everyone will see it. And where it hovers, then its door will open. And those who were invited and ready to go into the wedding banquet, they will enter into that door. And those who enter into the door, they will see and greet the king. When the door is closed, all of those ones who are looking back at things rather than actually physically looking up even into their own skies to see something, couldn't be bothered with that. Too busy focusing on the war. Too busy focusing on Israel. Too busy focusing on politics. All those ones who are looking back, remember Lot's wife, which is exactly what they're doing right now. They're being Lot's wife. You won't see any of them talk about this, because this hasn't been given to them. They haven't been able to see it. It's not revealed for them to see it. But it's been revealed to you. It's been revealed to me. We see it. We could understand it. We could believe it. We can talk about it. But it's like it's never even entered into their minds what is happening right now in this world. They're too busy focused on the flesh, the physical things, rather than to even look up and see this thing in their own skies. The blind leading the blind into the pit. It's what we're watching. And I'm seeing more and more of them come out of the woodworks every single day. I believe this star that I have seen, I believe it's New Jerusalem. And I'm seeing people who do not know the Lord, but who are not against Him. They're proclaiming this heavenly body out. I see it on people's channels now. Some of them really big channels. They're talking about it. And what that means is that the time has drawn near for that to reveal it to everyone in the world, and except those who are ready to go inside of it. The house that has many rooms, the place that Christ went to prepare, the place that Christ comes back with, New Jerusalem, that descends from the heavens, the literal home of God on the earth. I believe that's coming, and I believe we're able to witness that right now. The actual Star of Bethlehem that the Magi saw, I believe it's in our skies, and it's coming, and it will eventually hover over the earth where all will see it. Because when the King returns, it's no longer baby, flesh, human Jesus, born fully human, fully divine. It's no longer that seed that was planted in Mary's womb. But this is the King of Kings that returns. This is full-grown, crucified, resurrected Jesus that comes back. And believe me, he knows who are his and who are not his. And no one can take your crown if you are his. He won't let it happen, as he's already defeated Satan. The enemy has already been conquered. His place on the cross was our place on the cross. Those of us who have died while in this world, still alive in the flesh, we're the ones who are wearing the proper clothing at the proper time. We're the ones that go on to New Jerusalem when it comes. And that day is coming, because we can look up in our own skies and see what they saw 2,000 years ago before the King was born the first time. And one last thing, when speaking of these Magi, historically they would have been wealthy, like I said. They would have been rich. They would have been messengers or dignitaries or diplomats of the king, most likely of Persia. And you take a look at what all these watchmen today say about Persia, which of course is modern day Iran. And you look at Iran and you look at the people in Iran. First off, there has been an incredible movement in Iran of people seeing visions, having dreams, turning to the gospel. There's been a big movement of that. It's been kind of quelled because the beast who tramples everything underfoot, they don't want you to know that there are Christians living in those land that you're saying go and destroy with nuclear missiles. They don't want you to know that about it, because collateral damage to them. They don't care. So they kind of hide that point, but that is actually happening. And no other place in the world is quite like Iran, with the level of, I don't want to say mutiny because it's not to that point, but rebellion against the government, rebellion against the Ayatollah. For hundreds of years, they're fine with the Ayatollah. They live by it. But those people, especially the youth in Iran, you look at what they're doing, they want to be free. They want to be Western. And the Ayatollah has such a loose grip on them all right now. Now you remember the gifts that the king's messengers sent to Jesus 2,000 years ago. They paid him gifts. They worshipped him. They were extremely talented and good diplomats. They would have been highly knowledgeable in everything they were doing. They recognized him for what he was, king of the Jews. His own people didn't, but they did. And you ask yourself one question. For all of the watchmen and prophets out there you hear speaking about Israel and speaking about Iran and how Iran is going to get just obliterated by Israel. We're going to strike them, they're going to get obliterated, or they're going to hit Israel and Israel's going to retaliate. You watch something completely opposite of that happen, because the king who was given that gesture of goodwill 2,000 years ago, he will remember that gesture, and he will look upon those people and he will see them, and he will deliver many of them from the grasps. Something big will happen in Iran. I can guarantee it at some point in time, because of those gifts that were offered 2,000 years ago. He will pay them back in full with it. And that's not an earthly blessing. It's a heavenly blessing. So these are a couple other things to really think about when you think about these blind guides and watchmen out there in the world that know nothing of the Lord. You're not seeing anything any different. They didn't know about him. His own people didn't know about him 2,000 years ago either. And you look at this season in particular, we're coming into the Christmas season. Whatever you think about Christmas, it shows one important detail in the world. It shows the level of authority that the church has on culture, government, society in general. It shows the church in its level of power, its level of being able to restrain over the world. Now, I'm not old, 37. I remember what times of Christmas looked like whenever I was 5 years old. And yes, maybe my glasses are a little bit pink shaded here because I was a kid then. But I know and you know that it was different then. I mean, everybody participated in Christmas then. Your whole office was decorated. All the homes were decorated. The streets decorated. Everything was decorated. There were Christmas movies, big Christmas movies put out by Hollywood. Think of the Home Alone series and all of them, Elf, everything that came out. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, all these things that came out every single year that you look forward to. There was, in every department store, completely decorated for the season, and it began after Thanksgiving even. This were people that didn't believe that we're doing these things because the church held that much power over the world. Do you see that power now? It's lost its ability to restrain, and you can tell that by the Christmas season. So then if the church is no longer able to properly restrain, who's left? The ones who call themselves a church, who hide and run for covers and talk about war every day, and Jesus is coming to take us from the rapture anyway, so none of this matters, but let's talk about it because clearly it does. I don't know. Are they restraining anything? No. So what's left to restrain? Nothing but the Spirit of God. He's the only one holding back these angels, and he's doing it for the remnant who remain faithful to him. And you know who the remnant is? Do you know how small they are? Persia knew about the birth of Christ. They knew about the king. But who in Israel knew about Jesus? Who? Well, Joseph and Mary. Of course, Elizabeth. What I'm saying by this is just as the days of Noah were, just as the days of Lot were. The only one in his own house that believes in him, come the end, are but that small of a remnant. The very last of them. Because the church has lost its power to restrain. It's only the remnant that keeps those winds from blowing over the earth. And whenever those doors open up in New Jerusalem, it will be that remnant who board them. And as for everything else that happens after those doors shut, I believe there's going to be great tribulations, because I believe that upon the resurrections, you're going to have evil filling up this earth to the brim. Oh, and then those who see New Jerusalem depart, some of them who have their scales removed from their eyes, they're going to get to do exactly what they wanted to do before Christ came. That's work. Work for everything. Because you know what they've done? You know what they've been working for? Whenever they're telling you works don't matter, works don't mean anything. They do that because they're hypocrites, and I'm sure you understand that who listen to me. That's all they want to do is work, and that's all they do is work. They don't have any faith. They make up for it by their works in their own mind. They're under the law. Go to World War I. Did World War I really end? No, of course not. There was a treaty followed by all of the climate built up to bring in World War II, which then happened, less than 20 years later. Did World War II ever end? Well, you had the United Nations form, which gave birth to Israel, today's Israel. What does that remind you of? That reminds you of, oh, the Lord has been tarrying for too long. Let us go ourselves and make for him his house and put those who call themselves his people in them. Let us go and do it ourselves. So the United Nations puts Israel on the map. And what is the United Nations? It's a false sense of peace. It's a covenant with many that brought about a false sense of peace in the world, which we've all lived under in all of our lives. Because that false sense of peace, go back through after World War II. Has there been peace on the earth? No, I say it's been magnified. Vietnam, Iraq, Venezuela, Israel. Go down through the list. China, a complete genocide. South Africa, genocide. Go down through the list. North Korea and Korea. Go down through the list. There has been no peace at all on this earth since those United Nations were formed to bring peace. It's a false covenant, a false hope. And the only reason that the Western nations have avoided such things is because we've been the one trampling the rest of the world under our feet. For us, it has been relatively peaceful. But for the rest of the world, it's been nothing but a nightmare. The United Nations formed a false sense of peace, a false covenant, just like Israel has been formed under a false covenant, one of man, not of God. There's something to all the timing and all of this with right now you see this star appear in the heavens that now believers and unbelievers alike are beginning to bear witness to it, that it's something special, it's something different. You have all of the wars about to take place in the world. There shall be wars and rumors of wars. You have the pestilences going around the world. You have the earthquakes in diverse places. You have the gospel spread to the entirety of the world. That's how we know the church begins to lose her power once that's happened. You have all of these things happen that Jesus said to take note of and know that when you see all these things, I am here. And what's the very last thing that we now can see when we look up in our skies at night that none of the watchmen and none of the prophets will be able to see or tell you anything about because they don't pay any attention to it? That star of Bethlehem that's in the sky as we know it as. Ezekiel's wheel. Or as I know it, New Jerusalem. It's up there, so I urge you, my friends, get out some night. Take a look around. I bet you'll see it. I don't know if you'll see it right away. Don't know if it may take a couple of days, but you look up into that sky and you say, Lord, I want to see it. I want to see. I want to get a glimpse of what this is. I want to see what this man is talking about. I believe you, Lord. I see that you're coming back. Show me. Show me what you're coming back in, Lord. I want to see it, just a glimpse. Because even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the Master's table, and we are all dogs compared to the Lord. We who walk like John the Baptist, the family of God, what did John say? I'm not worthy to tie his sandals. That's how I see myself. I'm unworthy of what's coming to receive me in all ways. Even the dogs eat the crumb that falls from the Master's table. We will be elevated by him, but here we are the lowliest. And I tell you, if you want to see this and you believe, he will show it to you. You will look up and you will see it for yourself. God bless.